Hey, I'm Blaze, and this is Mario Brothers. This is the first game to actually feature Mario as the titular character, believe it or not. And it's very different from his previous outing of Donkey Kong, to say the least, as you can tell from this demo, which actually features the multiplayer aspect of the game. And as you'll also notice from this demo, this game has Luigi in it. If you could actually recognize him as Luigi, his color scheme has changed quite a bit, and that's probably mostly due to hardware limitations that are associated with this title. But this is actually Luigi's debut as a character. He hadn't appeared until now, so that's actually pretty interesting. And it's actually kind of odd that this game, or well, it's not odd that the game in fact is called Mario Brothers, but a lot of people simply refer to Super Mario Brothers, the game that came after this, as Mario 1, when it'd be more accurate to call this Mario 1. I mean, it is the first Mario game, technically speaking. But anyway, instead of just watching the same demo over and over, which doesn't really show you all that much, let's actually proceed, though I'll actually have to wait. So I'll talk about a little bit more about this game. This game, a lot of people are probably familiar with this game. It's referenced in many other titles. There's a stage for it in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. It received a remake on a few of the Game Boy Advance games, which I'll actually be covering that remake in a different video. It's featured in Super Mario Bros. 3 as a battle mode. This game is quite well known, to say the least, but if you're watching this, you probably know that, so it's kind of redundant for me to say that. Now, as you've seen in my previous videos, as is the case with these old arcade games, you're gonna get, or rather, these are ports of arcade games for the NES. This is the NES version. You're gonna get game A and B, and there's multiplayer versions of those options. B is more difficult than A, so we're gonna start in A and move over to B later. So here we are in Phase 1. Now, the goal of this game is to defeat all the enemies that are on the stage, simply speaking. You do this by hitting the bottom of the platform they actually stand on, and then kicking them away. It's actually pretty interesting, but rather unique. Even now, you don't really see that sort of mechanic used in any sort of games. You don't handle very well, actually. You kind of slide all over the place, and the jumping is really stiff. It's actually sometimes hard to place yourself on a platform the way you want to, at least when you're starting to play. I'm way better than I was when I started. I was actually terrible when I first played the NES version, because I actually played the Game Boy Advance remake beforehand, so I figured it would handle well. That was odd. I just kind of stood there when that happened. But yes, enemies will come out of those pipes, as will those coins you're seeing, which will give you extra points. They really don't do anything else besides that. And since I just lost life, it'd probably be, what's the term? Anyway, it's relevant that I bring up the lives, which you see at the top. You can also see your individual and top score, as is usually the case. You've probably noticed already, but when an enemy is the last enemy in the stage, it'll change color and move much more quickly. The enemies we're taking out now are called shell creepers. They actually aren't Koopas, though they do appear very similar. This is a test your skill stage, where you just simply try to collect all the coins that appear before time runs out. I've done terribly, so I'm probably not actually going to get it. I'm actually doing really poorly. So, as you can see, you can sometimes fall through the edge of platforms. I don't know why the game works that way, but it does. Funny, I actually practiced right beforehand, and I actually got a perfect score on the first skill test stage. So, it's kind of sad to see that not occur this time. But hey, you're never going to get your best run when you're Let's Playing. That seems to be the case with practically everyone. These enemies are sidesteppers. As you can see, you actually have to bop them twice before they'll flip over. The second time, they'll just get kind of angry, and that's about it. They also turn pink when they're really angry, and then the last enemy on screen, which is pretty interesting, and they move really fast, just as the shell creepers do. So other than the two-hit mechanic, they're practically identical. They're slightly more bothersome to take care of. Now, it's important to note, if you actually hit an enemy from the bottom after they've been downed, you will actually flip them up. So you don't want to hit them multiple times. It's actually not uncommon to just out of hastiness to actually hit not shell creepers but sidesteppers multiple times, because they do take multiple hits. I've done it before. It's not great. I mean, it usually what I'm really referring to, it's easy to hit enemies from the side multiple times. When, like, you see these enemies, they're right here stacked up together. It's easy to hit another enemy that you're not trying to. This is going to be difficult, but I made it, yeah. Those are fireballs. Fireballs will appear if you're taking too long, essentially. If you're staying sort of in the same area for too long, then they will appear and wreck your world. There's no actual way to take care of fireballs other than hitting them from the bottom as you would any other enemy, but they have to be positioned where they could actually be hit from the bottom. They come in red and green varieties, as you can see, and their patterns differ. Green kind of moves more quickly. And so, therefore, taking them out and generally avoiding them is actually kind of difficult. These are fighter flies. They only take one hit like shell creepers, but as you can tell, they jump up and down. So it's actually you're going to actually have to time your attack. That's pretty interesting. So yeah, they actually have an entirely different attack pattern than previous enemies do. So I actually think they're kind of annoying just because you kind of have to wait for them to actually get into a position. So hey, since it's oh, I kind of missed. This is a POW block. If you hit a POW block, it'll knock down all enemies that could be knocked down if you were to hit them. But since nothing was on the ground, I wasted one of its hits. And as you see, it depletes. POW blocks have actually come back in multiple titles. They came back in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. They appear in Smash Brothers as an item. So POW blocks are still actually relevant within the Mario universe, even though a lot of the things that come from this game actually aren't. Something else that I should bring up, you might think it's odd that you can't just jump on enemies like you could in most Mario titles. Speaking of jumping on enemies, I just did it. Yeah, as you can see, it doesn't go very well. But this game was originally intended to have a system in which you would just jump on enemies to defeat them, but apparently it was deemed too difficult, or not too difficult, actually it was deemed too easy, so they decided to ramp up the difficulty and do it this way. I do think it's very interesting that it's done this way, though I do generally find jumping on enemies to be more enjoyable than having to do this 2-step process, or even 3-step process, as is the case with sidesteppers. Let's see, can I take it? Let's see if I can take out one of these fireballs. No, I can't. I can't remember. I'm starting to wonder if I'm wrong and if you can only take them out in the Game Boy Advance remakes. Oh, no, you can. Okay. I started to wonder because there are certain things that differ between the versions. So I was wondering if that was one thing and I had just forgotten, but that's not the case. You actually can take them out. It is just difficult because you not only have to move to a lower platform, which can be difficult if they're right on top of you, but you also have to time the attack much like you do with the fighter flies. I don't know why I'm explaining the thing that I just demonstrated firsthand, but hey, it's fine. Oh, hey, now we're starting to see some icy stuff. This game actually has, and as you can see, ice physics go with the icy stuff. I don't know, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, but it makes completing this stage a pain, to say the least. I'm definitely not going to get it. I'm doing really poorly on these skill test stages, which is odd. I usually do pretty decently on them, but maybe I'm just distracting myself with my own commentary. And I get no bonus once again. You just get a multiplier for each coin you've actually picked up. We're going to be seeing those ice mechanics come back. They're not just going to come in these special skill stages. They're going to be a reoccurring feature, believe it or not. Which is funny. You already feel like you sort of are controlling an ice. It takes you a second. Oh, hey! Speaking of ice mechanics, those are, what are they called? Slip ice, I believe. I believe they're slip ice, but they're basically for what became known as freezies in later titles. Much like how shell creepers are very similar to, Koopas. I don't know why I couldn't think of the word Koopa. Yeah, slip ice, if you don't... Speaking of taking things out, I just got taken out myself. But if you don't actually take care of slip ice before it manages... before a certain amount of time, you will actually end up with a slippery platform to punish you for your slowness, I guess. So, they're not exactly the most favorable enemies to run into. I don't believe you actually, or maybe, I'm trying to remember. I don't think you actually have to take care of them to finish out a stage, so they're more like hazards rather than actual enemies. And you also don't have to flip them, they're actually a one-punch kill kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, now that we're playing on Game B, things should be a little more difficult, but as per usual, I've never found that like Game Bs are particularly more difficult. I mean, it's not like a huge increase, which is probably for the best. It always kind of confuses me when there's a huge gap in difficulty when a game presents you difficulty options, where, for example, hard is way more difficult than normal mode, that kind of thing. I've always thought that was quite odd, to where there could easily be an option that comes between them, but there isn't. So it probably is for the best that these difficulties are so similar. But still, you'd think there'd be a bit more of a clear difference between the two. This is going to be rough. No, it's not, because we can just loop to the other side. That's something that that actually comes in quite handy when dealing with fireballs in this game. Something interesting, you might have noticed it already. I often forget that you can actually move before the intro jingle completes. I keep missing. This is what's screwing me up. I keep missing that coin, and it's messing up my entire flow. I don't think I can make it. I might be able to. No, I think I've run out of time. Yep, I ran out of time. I was hoping I'd be able to show you what actually happens when you complete one of these successfully, but I was 1 coin short. That's the kind of thing that happens, but it's not that big of a deal, I suppose. Whatever. Also, I don't know if I've actually... Oh, great. Awesome. I don't know if I've actually mentioned... No, I have not mentioned it. This is actually the first time Mario appeared as a plumber. We're actually doing... plumbing in a sewer. This is a sewer, believe it or not. Oh, there's another instance of thinking you aren't going to jump on the platform, but you do, or vice versa. Normally, I think I am going to land on it, and I don't. So that was an interesting case where it was the reverse. As you can see, I accidentally bopped that shell creeper up, so my hard work was for naught. And I didn't jump over that. As I stated, you have to get a really firm running start to actually get a starting jump in this game. It's kind of annoying at times that it does work that way. You pretty much have 3 types of jumps: a direct jump, a slightly leaning jump, and a full forward jump. You really have to get a good head start to control, and you can't control your jump in midair. So that presents another problem. But see, if you do a really forward jump when you don't want to, you're going to go careening off, and you'll probably run into an enemy in later stages. Oh, this shell creeper's got me on the... Oh, and also, as I tried to do just now and failed, you can't immediately pivot and change your direction. It takes like a full second to do a proper pivot. Not a full second, but it takes quite a while to do a proper pivot. So once you commit to a direction, you better hope that's where you're going to go, because it's going to take you... If you're being swarmed by enemies anyway, you're going to... Better hope that's the way you really want to go, because it's not the easiest to change your direction. And that is one thing I don't really like about this game. This version of the game, anyway. That's correct in later versions, but the controls in this game aren't very tight at all. It takes a while to maneuver Mario. He's stiff in general. It doesn't feel good to control Mario in this game. So that's and considering how precise you have to be with your movements at times, it becomes a real hassle. So I'm not really fond of that particular aspect of this game, which is why I don't find myself coming back to this version very much. I typically opt for the Game Boy Advance version because it's practically spirited this version every way, though you will see that when I cover that particular version, so I don't know why I'm talking about this so much. But hey, back on that whole topic about this actually being a game where Mario does plumbing, and one of the few games where he actually does do any sort of plumbing, it doesn't really seem like it, does it? Like, this doesn't look like a sewer at all to me. It really looks like just an array of platforms that are arranged in some haphazard way. I might actually clear this time. Yeah, I got it! I'm actually pretty stoked on that. So, yeah, there you go. We got all 10 coins, so we get 8 times 800 multiplier, and we get an extra 3,000 points for getting a perfect score. Yay, points. Aren't you so excited for points? I'm not, except for the fact that it can present you with lives. So we do have 3 lives right now, actually, so that's pretty good. I'm actually being rather patient with the stage, but it usually is best to be patient instead of trying to rush through and just take out all the enemies. You don't get a times bonus or anything like that, so there's no real reason to be patient, other than the whole fact that there are fireballs that are going to be coming at you eventually. But honestly, it's oftentimes better to just deal with the fireballs when they show up and take your time while you can. From my general experience, that seems to be the best way of going about this. But hey, clearly I'm not an expert. I'm actually not very good at this game at all. Come on, let's go, do it. Hit, yeah, I got it. When you hit them at certain angles and they're really going, they fly quite a ways away. So that's pretty funny to me. I do think the physics of this game are very interesting. I do quite enjoy just the ferocity with which things start to move under certain circumstances. But given that you're so hard to control, that's also sort of a downside. Oh, and that's something I should point out. You don't have to worry about enemies coming through other enemies and going for you. As you can see, when enemies come in contact with other enemies, they just turn around. Though that can actually present problems for you if you're in under certain circumstances. So you're going to want to be wary of that. I will say though, even though there are a few things about this game I don't like, one thing I do quite like is the sound effects. Hitting enemies and knocking them out it's really satisfying. It just feels good to take out enemies, and that's how games like this should be, or that's how really any game should be. Your actions should be satisfying, so it's great that this game does a very good job of doing that. I mean, a lot of, like, the joy that comes... Wow, I don't know if I've ever actually gotten that... Oh, I died immediately after, but I don't know if I've actually ever gotten that to happen, get an enemy on top of the POW block. That's pretty interesting. And that's it. I do really like that little splash effect when you kick enemies into what I guess is the water. I guess you're kicking them into sewer water, which is pretty disgusting. But then again, why are all these enemies in the sewer in the first place? What sewer is this to where there are like giant flies, turtles, and crabs floating around? I mean, I know, like, maybe are they all pets that were flushed down the toilet or something? Is that what's going on? That's just strange. It's quite odd. To be fair though, given that this is a sewer, it's quite pristine for a sewer, isn't it? I mean, it's quite pleasing to look at, which is not something that sewers are typically described as. Phase 7. So, anyway, I don't think I've really mentioned this, but these actually are pretty much... Oh, ow. I died. These 3 enemy types are pretty much the only ones we're going to be seeing, unless you want to count, you know, the ice enemies. But, as I said, those aren't really proper enemies. Oh, that's a mechanic I've neglected to mention until now. That is one reason maybe you shouldn't always be patient. You should be patient when approaching enemies, but not taking them out. And the reason I say that is because, as you saw, if you leave an enemy down for too long... then it'll actually get up and change colors and become more ferocious. It'll actually move more quickly and such. So you actually do, once you actually knock an enemy down, you do want to take care of it pretty quickly. It's usually not a huge issue, but if you get multiple enemies that are in that sort of hyper state, and they're all coming at you, it becomes quite an issue. So I would recommend you just take them out as quickly as possible. They do stay down for a while, but don't just leave them hanging. They're not going to stay down forever. I realize I haven't actually hit the POW block. That is something, I oftentimes just leave the POW block alone and don't actually hit it. I don't know why. Ooh, that was a long slide right there. I can't get up. I can't get up. I'm not going to make it. Maybe I will, actually. Yeah, I might make it. Yeah, I made it. I made it just as the clock ticked down to 0. That was incredible. But hey, I'm pretty incredible. What a superlative run of that. Wow. That was crazy. Anyway, you know, given that this is sewer, I'd assume these platforms are made of probably concrete. You see bricks down there, so probably a really hard substance. So Mario must be punching it really hard for it to bend that way. Speaking of which, considering how frequently Mario punches hard objects, does he not have issues with his hands in general? It's kind of odd. He punches things a lot, and it never seems to faze him whatsoever. Speaking of Mario, once again he comes back with the blue... Oh, I was thinking I was fighting a shell creeper and I tried to knock it out. Yeah, Mario does have blue hair once again in this game because of those limited color palettes, which is pretty funny. This is the first time we do see his blue overalls and red shirt and red hat color scheme though, so that's pretty interesting that this is where that color scheme really started. One thing I'd also like to mention, you might have noticed, once you die, you come down a little platform. That really reminds me of Super Smash Brothers in that regard. And I can't help but wonder if that somehow inspired that sort of aspect of Mario Brothers. Or not Mario Bros, Super Smash Brothers, in that you come down upon a platform after death. I do think that's I hit 0. Oh no, I'm not playing on an original NES console. Skewer me. It seems like in every single video I accidentally hit ZR and do that. I don't know why. I just keep doing it for some reason. You might know sometimes waiting for enemies to get out of the way can be not a challenge, but it can be quite annoying having to wait on these slow enemies to finally move out of the way so you can take down one of their similarly slow-moving brethren. I also think it's funny that Mario has his own sound effect for when he runs, kind of. It's kind of funny. I don't know. It's kind of goofy. Though, I guess, another thing about a lot of old games use that because they don't really have proper music, so I guess they wanted to break up the monotony. Just break up the silence with some sort of sound. So I guess it's better than nothing. It sounds like it's almost a song, but it's not. And there I go down in the drink. Okay. Also, why is there so much money in the sewers? I've never really thought about it from a logical standpoint, but there's a lot of... I mean, it's not like a lot of... It's not like a high... What am I getting at? What I'm trying to say is there are a lot of coins. They probably don't amount to anything, but like it'd be like picking up a bunch of pennies in the sewer, I'd imagine. But why are there so many coins in the sewer? Do people just flush money? Like, wow, is money so worthless that people are just flushing it? What kind of inflation is that? Also, why do the enemies? I mean, obviously it's to denote that their behavior is changing, but I think it's funny that like these turtles become blue. It looks like they're kind of sick or something. Come on, let's see if I can get it this time. I'm doing quite well, so I'm almost certain to get it. And hey, 3.8 seconds to spare. That's pretty good. I think that sounded like an iDubbbz reference. That wasn't intentional. I just was saying that that run was in fact a pretty good run. So before you say, hey, memes, iDubbbz, that wasn't what I was going for, but alright. I am quite a fan of iDubbbz TV, but that wasn't actually an intentional reference. Alright, so I've got that shell creeper. Oh, okay. That didn't go well. I've got a shell creeper down there. Come on, can I get to it before he gets up? Sometimes if you take too long, you'll get to... Oh, great. I was kind of cornered there. I could have handled that much better, but... Sometimes you'll be running to an enemy to try to take it out before it actually gets up, and just as you touch it, just as you get there, it'll get up, and because you can't turn quickly, you'll end up hitting it, and it's really annoying. That's happened more times than I would like to admit. Oh, there! Oh, see, there you go. Just as I mentioned it, it occurs. Game over. Now, given that the game just told us it's over, I think it's time for the video to be over as well. I've played quite a few rounds. Hey, one more thing, since I'll just sit here and talk about this, because I always like to talk about the availability of these games. This game is available on all kinds of consoles, though the easiest one to acquire is the NES version because of its availability on Virtual Console and all that. Obviously, it was an arcade title, and then it got an NES port, as is the case with these kinds of games. But it was also released on, I believe, the Atari 2600, the Atari 5200, and the 7800. All three of the old Atari consoles actually got a version of this, from what I understand. It also got a Commodore 64 release and several other versions. As I've talked about, it's actually been remade and bundled with other Mario games before. So there's also they even released a version called Luigi Brothers during the year of Luigi, and I will be covering that version as well. Just you wait, I will make a video on that version. So until I do go and make a bunch of other crazy Mario Brothers videos, wait, what was I going with that sentence? I kind of forgot what I was saying in the middle of my outro. Anyway, I will see you all next time. Or I guess I won't really see you. I mean, you'll be seeing the video, but yeah, whatever, let's finish this.